Police investigators say the two Menendez brothers, who now admit to killing their parents, had the police completely fooled at the time of the murder in 1989. In court, the brothers are claiming they killed their parents after years of abuse. But police say at the time of the murders, the brothers expressed grief and shock over their parents' death.
What we will prove to you is it was done out of fear. Grabbed him by the throat and socked him square in the face and said, "If you ever embarrass me again, I will kill you."
Eric Menendez said that they felt that they could never equal their father's accomplishments. Eric Menendez was pleased, however, at having pulled off the murders without being caught.
Eric Menendez was by this time incapable of functioning. He was falling apart. Eric Menendez was obviously, visibly, dramatically hysterical. He was, as one of the officers will testify, traumatized. As our experts will tell you, Mr. Menendez, as a perpetrator of incest, was true to his aggressive, competitive, and fundamentally violent nature. He had always been very afraid that if he got close to a girl, she would somehow figure out what was going on with Dad.
Abramson said that Eric's friends from the last 3 years before the murders would testify that he was an admired high school tennis star, had made friends with other tennis players, was inventive, interesting, and fun, but he was also unusually anxious and seemed preoccupied. His tutors would describe him as someone who would suddenly space out in the middle of a lesson and they couldn't get him back. He was hidden, secretive, and his friends would say that they noticed that he lied to his parents about totally insignificant things. Abramson said that experts would explain that when you take a child whose life has been structured around secrets, keeping secrets becomes a high priority to them. She then stated that Eric's parents had intruded into every aspect of his life and had been tapping his phone for the last year before the homicides, which Eric didn't find out until after the murders. She said that experts would testify that kids need some degree of privacy and some illusion of control over their life. She said that this is why Eric lied to his parents. Abramson said that Eric believed his mom had supernatural powers because she acted strangely and knew all these things that he was concealing from her. She said that the court would hear how in the spring of 1989, Jose wasn't happy with Eric because he wouldn't give him the hourly details of tennis practice. She talked about how Eric was going to compete in the Junior National Tennis Championships and had a higher ranking. She then talked about how Eric was planning on attending UCLA that fall and how he was expected to make the tennis team. She talked about how Eric felt pressure to win, so he was cutting classes and his grades were suffering. She said that Eric would tell the court that by that time Jose would use the sex as punishment and that he came to realize it was a show of force and dominance and it wasn't normal. And Eric hated himself for not being strong enough to stop it. Abramson said that Jose sodomized Eric for the last time in May of 1989.
Eric Menendez's only consolation, the thing that sustained him, that had sustained him for years, he will tell you, was that he would escape to the dorm at UCLA in September, and this degrading chapter in his life would finally end.
She talked about how in July and August of 1989, Eric traveled with his parents to 3 different cities where the tennis championships were conducted. He played hard but not good enough for Jose, and when he lost the last match, Jose's fury was worse than anything Eric had ever experienced. Abramson said that a week before the homicides, Jose announced to Eric that when he was to attend UCLA, he'd be required to sleep at home several days a week, and all of the hope that Eric had sustained himself on all of the years vanished. She said that Eric then packed his clothes and was going to leave, but his parents stopped him and said that they would always find him, that there was no escaping them, and that he could never survive on his own. Jose then told Eric that he would deal with him more fully when he returned from his business trip he was taking that week. She said that on Tuesday, August 15, 1989, Jose left for that business trip, and later that day Eric witnessed an argument between his brother and his mother, in which Kitty ripped the hairpiece off Lyle's head. Abramson said that before the incident, Eric had no idea Lyle wore a hairpiece, and it was now clear to him that everyone in the family kept secrets. Abramson said that Eric then told Lyle what their father had been doing to him. She said that Eric would testify about the fateful conversation because it made Lyle determined to help his brother out of the abusive situation he said he was in.
The form of that aid was to be a confrontation with their father, in which Lyle Menendez was going to insist that Jose Menendez stop molesting his son and allow the brothers to leave the home and live together.
Abramson said that after the decision of Lyle confronting Jose, Eric lived in dread of what his father would say about revealing the secret. She said that Eric also had hope in Lyle and that maybe things would work out. She said that on Thursday, August 17th, 1989, Jose returned from his business trip and met with Lyle about Eric. She said that Jose was defiant and told Lyle that he is my son and I will do what I want with him. Abramson said that experts with abused children as well as abusing parents would testify that although most molesters deny it, when they admit it, they have their own sick ways to justify their behavior, that they have the right or the power or the child didn't mind or they really must have liked it.
And you will hear from our experts that given Jose Menendez's entire personality and character structure, this outrageous statement fit his pattern.
Abramson then said that Lyle had threatened Jose that he would go public about the abuse if Jose didn't stop, which led to a series of violent and hysterical confrontations between Eric and his father and then his mother. She said that Jose threatened to kill Eric, and Kitty said she knew about the abuse and blamed and hated her sons, and she had wished that her sons had never been born. Abramson said that Friday, convinced that they were going to be killed, Lyle and Eric purchased the shotguns for protection. She said that they were going to buy handguns but found out that they'd have to wait 2 weeks and were afraid to wait. She said that Eric would describe that the next 2 days were filled with increasing terror, nightmares, and lack of sleep. He would also describe in detail the ominous actions of his parents that convinced him that they had planned to kill him and his brother.
And on Sunday night, it appeared to him that the trap was sprung. By words and deeds, he perceived that his father and mother were about to kill him, and he reacted with pure terror, pure panic. He fired every round in his gun at them.
Abramson then said that there were witnesses, one of whom worked for the FBI on the analysis of crime scene evidence and the profiling of sociopathic killers, will describe the Menendez crime scene as a classic example of overkill by abused children who kill their parents out of fear. She ended her opening statements by saying that Ozil wasn't a witness to the crime, but he only knew what he was told, and he wasn't told the truth of why the brothers killed their parents. She said that they would challenge Ozil's truthfulness and that he had a track record of lying. She also summarized what she intended to prove.
Eric Menendez was the abused son of wealthy parents. He killed his parents because he could no longer endure their abuse and had to stop it. When he did that, he unwittingly made himself a threat to everything his parents valued. He put himself in mortal danger. When he sensed that danger was imminent, his instinct to survive took over.
That was the end of Abramson's opening statements. The first prosecution witness was 911 dispatcher Kristen Nye. She is the one who took the emotional 911 call from Lyle. She had worked for the police department as a dispatcher for 2 years at the time of the 911 call. The 911 tape was played for the court. After the tape was played, Nyan testified that Lyle's call was highly emotional. She also testified that first responders were dispatched immediately and were on the scene within a couple minutes. She also said that the first responders had called dispatch and had them call Lyle back to come out of the house. Avril Crom took the stand next. At the time, she had been a neighbor of the Menendez family. She had been living in that neighborhood for over 10 years. Crom testified that on the night of the murder, she heard sounds like Chinese firecrackers going off. She said that she lived 2 houses down from the Menendez home and had all her windows open because it was a hot night. She said she had heard the noises between 10 and 10:15, and that she remembered what time it was because she was anxiously awaiting her daughter Jennifer to return home at 10:30 from a neighbor's house. Crom said that the noises were popping sounds, and there was about a half a dozen of them, then a brief silence before more popping sounds. Her 12-year-old son, Josh, was at home watching a TV movie. He heard the noises and wanted to call 911, but Crom wouldn't let him. Crom then testified how the police came to her house the next day and interviewed her about what she heard the night of the murders. Crum then testified that the morning after the murder she had refused to talk to police the first time they came by, which had been around 6:30 a.m. She didn't talk with them until they came back about 2 hours later. She then testified that she never met the Menendez family. She only saw flyers for tennis lessons that they were offering at their house. That is how she was aware they lived there. Beverly Hills police officer Michael Butkus was next to take the stand. At the time of the murder, he had been a police officer for 4 years. He testified that at 11:49 p.m. on August 20th, 1989, he was riding with his partner, John Zernacki, when they were dispatched to the Menendez house. Butkus and his partner were first on the scene. He said that when they exited their car, they heard screaming coming from the front door. A big double metal gate stood between the officers and the house. The house was very dark, and the only light came from dim street lights on the corner. Butkus said that he thought that one side of the gate was open. He said that Lyle and Eric ran out of the front door towards the officers, yelling and screaming. He said that he possibly had his weapon drawn as he told the brothers to get down on the ground. The brothers fell onto all fours and after a few moments switched to sitting positions. He said that he tried to ask the brothers questions, but they were uncooperative and distraught. All the brothers would say was, "Oh my God," over and over again. Butkus said that after a few minutes the brothers moved back to all fours and pounded their fists on the ground. He said that one of the brothers pointed to the house and repeatedly told the officers to just go see. Butkus testified that he didn't think or see the brothers cry.
It was very dark. Their faces were a reddish color, but I don't recall seeing what I would say real teardrops coming off their face or anything.
He said that almost immediately after he and his partner arrived on scene, other units arrived. He said that since they weren't getting information out of the brothers, the sergeant sent him with other officers to go investigate, while Officer Angel took the brothers to a SWAT car. Beverly Hills Police Sergeant Kirk West was next to take the stand. At that time, he had been at the job for 17 years. He testified that shortly before midnight, on the night of the murders, he was dispatched to the crime scene and was one of the last units to arrive there. He said that he was head of the team of officers that went in with Butkus to go investigate what had happened. Kirk said that he skipped his flashlight across the foyer floor in case that there was a suspect in there and it could act as a distraction. After the group of officers made a sweep of the living room, Officer Kirk approached the family room at the end of the hallway and peered inside. He noticed Jose sitting on the couch and Kitty laying on the floor in front of the couch. He made a quick visual check of the bodies. He checked Jose for signs of respiration. Found none. He noticed Jose had a large wound on his knee that didn't appear to be bleeding any longer. He said there was a large amount of blood around and on Jose as well as a big chunk missing out of the back of his head. He noticed that Kitty also had a large amount of blood around and on her body. She had some large wounds on her body that were not bleeding at all. He didn't notice her breathing either, and he was able to look at one of her eyes, and it seemed to be fixed. He said that she had a few wounds to her head also. Kirk testified that the bullet pattern in one of the doors appeared to him to be from a shotgun. When using a shotgun, there was quite a bit of smoke, but when Kirk surveilled the scene, he did not see nor smell any smoke. He said that he looked around, but couldn't find any shotgun shells either. Kirk said that in the family room there was lights on as well as the TV. The family room had double doors which were open. In the search of the house, Kirk found two .22 caliber rifles in the parents' closet. There was also a small dog and dog droppings found on the floor, and the room was messy in appearance. Next to testify was Richard Catalani. He was a criminalist for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. A criminalist is a person that gathers and analyzes physical evidence and prepares a report for presentation in court. Catalani had a bachelor's degree from California State University of Northridge, with a major in biology and a minor in chemistry. After graduation, he did a 12-month internship in toxicology at SmithKline Clinical Laboratories, where he was employed until 1985, after which he was hired by the Sheriff's Department. He had worked in toxicology, narcotics, serology sections, and at the time was assigned to the firearms identification section. Catalani was asked to make a comparison or analyze a substance found on a pair of women's white tennis shoes, which the prosecution entered into evidence as Exhibit 14. Catalani qualified as an expert in blood analysis in court 35 to 45 times up to that point, and he was in the serology department approximately 4 years. He had testified that he was the one who determined that it was human blood stains on the shoes.
And could you describe them briefly for the record, please? It's a pair of white women's tennis shoes with bloodstains.
Okay, and how do you know they're bloodstains?
I did a test to determine that they were indeed human blood.
Next up was Beverly Hills Detective Les Zoller. At the time, Zoller had worked as a police officer for 20.5 years and was working in the robbery and homicide division. His job was to take the crime scene over from patrol officers and to investigate and direct the investigation at the crime scene. He testified that he arrived on scene at 1 a.m. on the 21st of August at the same time as his partner, Detective Tom Lenahan. Zoller supervised the collection of evidence. He said he looked for shotgun shells and found none. He then testified that he had collected Kitty Menendez's white shoes from the coroner's office to be booked at the Beverly Hills Police Department and later were sent off to the Sheriff's Department for analysis. Zoller then testified that he had the Beverly Hills Identification Bureau collect wadding from the crime scene. Wadding is a component within a shotgun shell. There is a plastic tube, which is the shotgun shell itself. On the bottom is the primer or the brass plate, which has the primer in it. Then on top of the primer is the gunpowder. On top of the powder is the wadding. That wadding is also called spacers. Depending on the shot of the shotgun shell is dependent on how much wadding or spacers there are. Then there is a spacer that holds the shotgun shell pellets themselves. Zoller said that 13 pieces of wadding were found at the crime scene. He then testified that he had attended the autopsies of Kitty and Jose, where he collected 3 pieces of wadding from the coroner after having retrieved them from the bodies. He also said that some pellets were collected at the crime scene from around the bodies as well as from within the couch and on the floor. Prosecutor Pamela Bozanek had a photo that she admitted into evidence, which she showed to Detective Zoller. She then asked him what it was a picture of. He said that it was a picture of the bottom of the tennis shoe. She then asked him if the photo depicted how the shoe was found at the crime scene. Zoller said yes, it was. Bozanek then admitted the shotgun pellets and wadding into evidence. Bozanek then asked Zoller if, when he conducted the search inside the Menendez home, if he found some .22 caliber rifles. He said that yes, he did. He said that he found them standing up in the master bedroom dressing area that had the walk-in closets. He testified that he had examined them and that they were not loaded. Bozanek asked him if he seized the rifles. He said that he didn't because it wasn't in the area of the crime scene and that the weapons used for the murders were shotguns. She then asked Zoller if he looked for the shotgun shells. He replied yes. Bozanek then asked him if he found any. He said no. Zoller testified that he was at the crime scene for about 8 or 9 hours. Bozanek wanted to know if that when Zoller arrived at the crime scene at 1 a.m., did he see Eric or Lyle? He said that no, he didn't see them until about 5 a.m. when another officer told him that the brothers were outside and they wanted to talk to him. Bozanek asked him if he remembered what time the coroner's rep showed up. He replied that it was at 4:45 a.m. when he arrived and 6:45 a.m. when he left. Bozanek asked Zoller if when the brothers first showed up, did he send them away. He replied he had. She then asked him when was the next time he saw the brothers. Zoller said at 8:30 a.m. Bozanek wanted to know if he'd seen any blood on their clothes the first time he saw the brothers. He said no. Bozanek wanted to know if when the brothers came back, if he had let them in the house. Zoller said that they were almost done with the house at that point, except for the family room. He said that he told the brothers when they were finished that they could have access to the house, but cautioned them about the family room. Bozanek asked if when the brothers arrived at the house, if they asked to retrieve anything. Zoller said yes. When the brothers came to the house for the first time, they asked if they could retrieve their tennis equipment from the family room. Bozanek asked Zoller when he was at the crime scene, did he see tennis equipment. Bozanek then asked Zoller what his reply was to the brothers' request. He said that he didn't want to relinquish anything from the family room because the investigation had not been completed.